Hi, hello, how are you? If you're new here, my name is Alex, and if you're coming back, we're best friends now, you already know how this goes. I hope you're doing well, and if not, that's okay. I totally get it. It's okay to not be okay, and I hope tomorrow is better. I truly, truly do. Now that it is September and Halloween season is upon us, I thought it was time to recommend some autumnal and spooky and cozy reads. Just, tis the season, or tis the damn season, as Miss Taylor would say. So I got some great books here recommended, different subgenre types. So the first genre is witchy books, because this is the season of the witch. And I don't make the rules, but witches just fall depends on witch energy, so. The first book I have here is White is for Witching by Helen Oyeyemi. And this is the first book of hers that I read, and it was a very good introduction to her work. I really love this story. It's telling the story of Miri, who has this strange connection to her family home from her mother's side, and is kind of connected to the spirit of her mother, her grandmother, and her great-grandmother. And it's told from the perspective of her twin brother, this girl named Ore, who she meets in a interview for uni, and from the house itself. So I already really like a book that has the house as a character beyond just being a setting. I think that's always really interesting. And this was just a really haunting book. The writing style is really incredible. It is very eerie, it is very spooky, and it is quite unsettling. So I think it's the perfect witchy vibe. I think it's a great fall read. And then for kind of a lighter witchy book, we have All Our Hidden Gifts by Carolyn O'Donoghue. Normally I don't read young adult fiction, okay? It's not something that I would kind of pick up on my own. But this was very graciously sent to me by Candlelight Press, which I am very grateful for because I loved this book. It was magical, it was witchy, it was funny, it was queer, it was great. I actually made an entire video dedicated to how much I love this book. And it tells the story of May, who's kind of like this troubled teenage girl. And during her detention, where she's cleaning out the chokey at her school, she comes across this set of tarot cards. And they're very unique. They're not like other tarot cards. And there's this one card called the Housekeeper card, which she can't find any information about. And then her and her friends all come to realization that they have these special powers, all kinds of witchy, crazy stuff goes on. It was really fun, and it has these great illustrations in it too of the tarot cards and stuff. So I thought that was really great. And the book is also hot pink, and you guys know I really do love a good hot pink book. So that was a good, fun, witchy time. And then we have some unsettling books. Some books that will make you uncomfortable, but in the best Halloween style way. The first one we have here is Sisters by Daisy Johnson. This tells a story of sisters July and September after they move to this old, kind of isolated home with their mother following an accident at the high school. You don't find out what happens immediately. It's kind of slowly you come to realization what happens and what September and July had done. But for the most part, it's about their relationship, which is kind of very off-putting. It's a very strange, very codependent bond. And September, who is the older sister, kind of has this cruel, almost malicious control over her sister. She has this power, and it's a lot about their power dynamic. And it's very interesting. It's a very strange book. It also has some bits of narration that are told from the perspective of the house, which again, I find that really interesting. So I really enjoyed this one, and there are some really good lines. It's a gothic thriller, very atmospheric, perfect to cozy up with a good cup of tea. Then we have a book that I received as part of my book subscription, and this book was very different to the others that I read, so it really stuck out to me. And that's The Need by Helen Phillips. So this tells the story of a young mother whose husband is like away on a business trip or something, so it's just like her and her 2 young kids. She's trying to work her job and just, it's very chaotic. She's exhausted. And she starts hearing noises in her house one night when she's home alone with the children. And she's like, it's fine, it's just my exhaustion. But then she's like, wait, maybe it's not, someone's in here. And then she's like, no, it's just an old house, you know, houses make noises. And then she's in the living room and someone hops out of her coffee table wearing a deer head. So you can imagine this is a very unsettling, creepy book. And just a lot of weird stuff goes down throughout this novel. And it's just, you can't put it down because you're just like, I have to know what's next. Like, I need to know what happened. So I thought that was a good, creepy little read. And then we have horror/gothic fiction. So I wanted to recommend 2 very different types of horror. The first one is My Best Friend's Exorcism by Grady Hendrix. This is like classic retro 80s horror, has all those horror tropes, is just like ridiculous and funny and over the top, and it's great. I'm not original for recommending Grady Hendrix. He's like one of the biggest horror writers right now, but there's a good reason why. His books are really fun. I really enjoyed reading this one, and it's about this girl and her best friend. They're like hanging out with some other friends, and like it's kind of like a bad trip gone wrong, and her best friend comes back possessed. So it's all about the main character trying to exorcise this demon from her best friend. And it's about female friendships and about those pivotal friendships growing up, like those really strong, important friendships that we have, and how that changes over time, and how we may grow apart, we may grow back together, and how like a relationship changes over time. Really interesting, really funny, really great. I loved it. I thought I would never like horror, but I loved this book. I just thought it was fantastic. Then for a more gothic style horror, we have Through the Woods by Emily Carroll. This is an anthology of short stories told in the form of a graphic novel, which is also illustrated by Emily Carroll. And these stories are scary. They're really scary, and they're paired with some really fantastic art. So it really immerses you in all of these stories, and there are just some really fantastic pieces and just great lines throughout this. It kept me up at night. I remember reading this like first thing in the morning, and just like thinking about it all day and thinking about it all night, all the way till the point that I finally fell asleep. It's a really great anthology. I would like to reread it again this fall because it's just so much fun. And yeah. After that, we have fantasy. I mean, magic and fall, just, it goes together. It just makes sense in my head. So I want to recommend this atmospheric fall classic, and that's The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. Need I say more? It's about these 2 magicians that kind of have this like lifelong competition between the 2 of them. And the setting for this book is the Night Circus, which appears with no warning, out of nowhere, just one night, it's there. And then the next day, it's not, kind of thing. It's only open at night, and this book has just really great descriptions of the weather and the food and all of the like different tents within the circus. And it's just like a really cozy, fun little magical read. And then we have a Women's Prize for Fiction winner, and that's Piranesi by Susanna Clark. I hear very mixed reviews about this book. Some people loved it, some people just could not care less about it. Personally, I really liked it. I thought this was very well written, and I like a book that I absolutely have no idea what's going on for like 50% of it, and then things slowly piece together and you don't get the full picture until you're like at the very end and you're like, holy crap, and then even then not all your questions are answered. I think that's great. So if that's something that could interest you, this book is for you. Our main character, Piranesi, he's stuck in this labyrinth of a building. It's kind of dark academia-esque. and he's like the only one, and it's kind of like a parallel world to the real world, and all kinds of weird stuff happens, and it's very confusing for the first 50 pages, but I think it's so worth the investment, and I just think it's a really good mythology-inspired type fantasy for the fall season. Then we have cozy Halloween recommendations. I didn't want to recommend like classic Halloween recommendations. I wanted nostalgic Halloween books. I wanted Halloween books that feel like what Halloween is like when you're a kid. So I want to recommend first Pumpkinheads by Rainbow Rowell. This tells the story of these two kids that work this like fall festival, and I think it's set on Halloween Day, and all kinds of fun, crazy stuff happens during this festival, and it's kind of about how these two friends get together. So it's like a romance thingy. And there's just a lot of pumpkins and candy apples and like costumes and fun treats, and it's just very warm, it's very cozy, it feels like a hug. The art is great, it's just like very feel good. I remember like reading this in a deep depression and feeling really good after reading it, so it's a very uplifting story. Then I want to recommend Sheets by Brenna Thumler. And this is another sweet Halloween story, and it's about this young girl who had lost her mother, and it's just like her dad, and her siblings, I think. And they're responsible for taking care of the laundromat that her mother started. And they're basically like hemorrhaging money, like they're dead broke. And this guy is trying to buy the laundromat, but like they really don't want to sell because it feels like their last memory of their mother. So it's basically like this young girl and her grief and her responsibilities. And parallel to that story is the story of a young boy who died, and it's like him in his ghost world. And he comes upon the laundromat and he finds himself among all these white sheets. So he's like, hell yeah, ghost party. So he feels right at home right away. It's great. I love it. It's very heartwarming. It is so sad. It made me emotional, but it's so good and very uplifting in the end, and the artwork is fantastic. Anyway, that's it. That's all for my recommendations. I hope you got something out of this video, and I hope you have a lovely start to your fall season. It's supposed to start in a few days after this video comes out. By the time this video is out, the announcement for mine and Sally's readathon should be out there, and it's called Trick-or-tbr, and it's going to be the last 2 weeks of October, celebrating Halloween, celebrating the cozy vibes, the spooky vibes, all that good stuff. So if you want more information about that, I will link it down in the description below. Other than that, like this video if you like this video, subscribe if you'd like to see more of my content, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.